So the premise of The Genius is it's your standard reality show, except there's nothing embarrassing. There's no gross eating challenge. There's no public humiliation. This is a game show designed to show off how intelligent its players are. This is a game show designed around puzzles, social etiquette, and just other knowledge kind of games. All of the challenges are mental in some facet, and then I broke it down into a couple of categories. So going on season 1, brand new show, had some very familiar faces if you were into idol groups or Korean dramas or that kind of stuff. They had a politician that was currently running in a campaign.
When was this?
2012.
I want to say it was 2012.
Okay.
2012 is when it aired, and then there was a year in between the next casting, and then it went through 2016.
Okay, I just wanted to know the general time frame.
And so the first subset of games is going to be these social games. The first game, this is the first episode, it's the 1, 2, 3 game. And all of the rules are on the screen, but we're going to do a brief audio refresher for it. And so players are provided with a deck of cards that run, they have 3 1s, 3 2s, 3 3s. And at their own leisure, they have the ability to play war with the other players. And you're not shuffling up the deck. Once you've used a card, that card is used. So you get to play 9 times unless you give your cards to other players. Do you remember anything from this episode you want to touch on?
Only the death episode, the death part. So each episode also includes a death, what they call it, a death challenge at the end, where instead of just because you lost the game, you're out, instead the losing player picks anyone else except for the winning player, and they go into a death match to see who gets eliminated from the show.
So this is going to be, all the games that we're doing first are going to be Season 1's group games. And then at the end of Season 1, we'll do all the Season 1 death matches. And depending on how much time we have, we'll go into Season 2. I know we're not going to get through Season 4 in this panel. Hopefully, you all do the very kind thing of like and review us on the Guidebook app so that they take us back next year and we can continue this wonderful tradition of the Genius panel. Also, exactly, yes. So the cool thing about this game is it really can only be played with an odd number of players. Yes, you absolutely can play with an even number of players, but if you check down the second to last bullet point, you'll notice that any player still holding cards at the end of the time limit will automatically have 0 points, no matter how many points they earned. None of the players picked, I shouldn't say none of the players. Enough of the players didn't pick up on this while they were playing that one player was guaranteed to have 0 points. That's why this is a social game and not a strategy game, because you have to convince somebody to play war with you. Nobody has to play with you. So they essentially, in the first episode, ostracized a player right from the get-go. Do we have any questions about the 1, 2, 3 game? This, yep.
So if you tie, it's 0 for both, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe one player was able to get 7 points. The player who won, I think, had 7 points because other players gave him their 3s. You can absolutely collaborate. Say, hey, Josh, we're gonna play this. I'm playing a 1. You should probably play a 2, and tell the other player so that they can get more points. As far as being able to play this at home, this is an easy 10 on the scale. You absolutely can recreate this game. The only catch is you want the fact that a player is going to lose to be a surprise to the players. So you would want to play this with a bunch of friends who haven't played this game before as kind of a parlor trick almost. The last time we ran this panel, we did it about Survivors Challenges, the CBS television show, and the playability rating for these is going to be much higher than our usual The Greatest Game You'll Never Play panel, because our normal games have constructs that you have to build in your backyard or that kind of stuff. These are
not physical.
For the most part, these games can be played with a normal deck of cards and a bunch of friends. So episode 2, I think, I'm pretty sure I'm going in order. Episode 2
Yeah.
had the election game. And the election game is very straightforward. Not going to be much time spent on this one. At the start, players had 5 minutes to say, yes, I want to run, or no, I want to sit out. There was no benefit to sitting out at all, other than the fact that if you're not running, you are not able to lose. So almost everybody announced their candidacy saying they wanted to run, and then slowly as they interacted with each other, as they talked to each other, people one by one dropped out until there were, it was either 2 left at the end or 3 left at the end. And this one, again, is a social game because players absolutely are allowed to lie and say, yeah, I'll vote for you, and then not do so.
I want to say there was only 2 people that didn't elect to run themselves. That essentially said, I'll just tag on to the winner.
Yeah. One of the cool strategies that a player used in this game was he gave all of his chips to another player to distribute. So any candidate was allowed to distribute 20 chips, and those chips got turned into prize money for any person who was holding the winning candidate's chips. The prize money in this game, they were called garnets. They're little cubes. They look kind of like this, except not artistic, like actual physical cubes. And they were worth roughly $1,000 each if you transfer the currency.
And explain the most important part.
I didn't.
So it's a very simple team game. In the entire competition, they continually add garnets, and in each game, they can add certain numbers of garnets. Essentially, if you all play together, the last person who wins can have a lot of money, or you can all be super spiteful and take your currency with you and take it out of the pool permanently.
Season 1 actually, Season 1, if you beat somebody in a death match, you took their garnets. So in later seasons, if you beat someone in a death match, their garnets were forfeit. But in the first season, they went to the winner of the death match. So all of these games have the common theme of it needs a distinct winner or winners, and it needs a distinct loser, because the deathmatch candidate would then pick somebody who was a non-winner to play against them in a duel.
Yeah.
So just kind of theorizing in my head, in this game it would probably be better to support whoever loses so that you would not be chosen for the deathmatch and don't have a chance to be eliminated.
Absolutely, and that's why that's another big reason this is considered a social game as opposed to a deception game. The zombie game, I would not really say is Werewolf the closest thing to that one?
Yeah.
Are you already dead?
No, I'm not dead.
Oh, is green the survivors? I thought.
No. Green, it's on your head, you're a zombie.
Okay, so it's the same remit either way.
Yeah.
If you don't know about it, there's a zombie game that MAGFest plays every year. Don't tell the audience to don't broadcast the hey, come kill me as soon as I'm leaving the panel.
I'm gonna take it off so that you can't hit me.
Is that within the rules?
It is within the rules to put a ceasefire on yourself because you don't want to play currently.
Cool. So the zombie game, do you remember, do you want to talk about this?
The rules are very simple. You can sign up actually almost
the
right
genius
outside.
zombie game.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Never mind.
So the great thing about the genius zombie game is the 2 zombie players were from the start immune to being the deathmatch candidate. They could still be chosen by the deathmatch candidate to be their opponent if they didn't win, but they were not they were not forfeiting their ability to move forward within the game. And so, trying not to spoil too much because I really do think you should go on Reddit and look up somewhere to watch these. The person who has the best subtitles for it, in my opinion, goes by the screen name Scrumdiddlyumptious.
Wait, season 1 still on YouTube?
Nah.
They took it down?
Sorry. Episode 4 forward is still on YouTube. The first 3 episodes are no longer on YouTube.
We originally found this show on YouTube.
I'm surprised they're still up there because the show makes liberal use of Western music. Let's see. Uses the theme from Cowboy Bebop. Skrillex in multiple
episode
seasons.
1, yeah, episode 1. Great music, by the way.
Uses Moby. What else?
Wouldn't be like every episode.
Yeah. There's some big like actual song in every single episode. It has multiple Adele songs in it. So I'm surprised that any episodes are still on YouTube. Zombie game's pretty straightforward. The election game, I would actually say, has a playability of 7. You kind of need to have people who don't know each other for that one, because it's not going to play well if you have a group of friends that do all know each other. The zombie game, the way they run it, I would say you're better off just going and playing werewolf, so I'd give it a playability of 5.
Yeah.
Do the human players know who the zombies are?
No.
Do they, after every round, do they tell the new zombies that they're zombies? Or is it the entire round is played with, like, whether or not you know you're a zombie potentially?
I apologize. Forgot to read these questions back. The question was, do zombies know they're a zombie? Do other players know who the zombies are? And if a player becomes a zombie, do they find out? And the answers to that are yes, the zombies know they are zombies. No, the humans don't know who the zombies are. But yes, when a player becomes a zombie, I do believe they were told, hey, you're a zombie now, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-mm.
They weren't?
It was a part of the social game. So if you didn't know you were a zombie, you could still infect other people.
Okay.
And at the end of the round, everyone had to touch someone else.
They did at the end of each round explain. They did tell how many players were zombies, if I remember correctly.
So you would know that there are 7 zombies in total.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the 2 starting zombies win, how do they determine the loser?
So if the 2 starting zombies win, the zombies get to pick out of all the no longer humans who the loser is. I don't think they show it as well as American TV shows like The Challenge, Big Brother, Survivor do, the player-player interaction for choosing who wins and who loses things. Especially, the one thing they do touch on is a player who's lost and is in the death match. They normally do show why that player picked who they face off against in the death match. But in the times where you have ties or where you have multiple winners and they have to pick somebody amongst themselves, it's usually one person's opinion that gets shown through and not the whole group's opinion across the board. As far as alliances that are not shown on screen, I do think the game, most of the players play individually for a lot of it. There are a couple.
Than, like, what was Old Man Sun and Jung Yu, the winner of season 1?
I wasn't gonna tell them who won, but Jung Yoon was not the winner of season 1.
Was he not?
No, Jin Ho was.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she lost season 1. She came 3rd. But they'll show duo alliances, and they'll show groups that are working together across multiple episodes, but it doesn't have the same big alliance feel that other reality shows have, because enough of the games are team games and you are not on the same team as each other that you'll end up working with people that favor you more than you'll end up working with people that you know you're going to work with, except for season 3, where players did form some die-cast alliances.
Yeah, I mean, season 1, you pretty episode for episode, you could see people working with different groups of people every episode. It wasn't like every time they would go towards the same group. It was like, whoever I can find today helps me.
Season 1 did have a player who was particularly ostracized, and they really had to fight their way through a number of episodes, but at the start and at the end, they were able to integrate themselves with some groups pretty well. Yeah. Catch the Burglar is a wonderful game that is loosely based off of 2 Rooms and a Boom. Has anyone played 2 Rooms and a Boom before? All right, good. So that one seemed a little familiar, but for everybody else, you have a bomb and you have a terrorist, and you have got 2 groups of people who cannot communicate with each other. And every couple of minutes, you have to send somebody from your room over to the other room. And at the end of the game, you do not want the terrorist and the bomb in the same room together, basically.
President. There's a bomb, there's a terrorist, and a president.
Okay.
The terrorist and the president.
Sorry, you don't want the terrorist in the same room as the president. My mistake. It's been a little while since I've played that one. I played it at MAGFest, actually, my first MAGFest 6 years ago.
Bunch of other caveats depending on what everything's in.
And you can add players with special powers and things like that. It's another werewolf-esque game. What you can do is assigned to you at the start. And I'd say Catch the Burglar is a solid 9. You do need a player who's the moderator, but it is something you could run with your friend group.
Odd question. How many of you have played Werewolf? Okay.
I thought that one was something everybody would kind of know. Anybody who has not played Werewolf, that needs me to explain the rules. Okay, so a group of players are werewolves, and every night they eat another player. And then everybody consists of the village, and every day they lynch a player hoping to kill off the werewolves. And you have to talk amongst yourselves and try to accuse people. And there's 4 or 5 different ways to run it. The most popular currently is a game called One Night, where you don't need a moderator because the game moderates itself. I prefer the ultimate version, which comes with the support for 76 players, but does need a moderator.
And then Epic Mafia is online.
Yeah, and it plays like Epic Mafia. It plays like Town of Salem. Lots and lots of versions of the same game structure. Catch the Burglar, if you haven't taken the time to read through the rules, you've got a town of 5 and a town of 3. Adjust the towns to your play group and adjust the number of turns to your play group and adjust the gold to your play group size. But basically, the numbers they came up with work very well for a group of 8. One player is the burglar, and every night they get sent to, every night both villages kick somebody out and send them across the way to another village. If you kick the burglar out, he steals no money, and everybody gets to keep their money. Otherwise, he steals money from the village he's in. The caveat to this is it's more important to have the burglar in the other village at the end of the game than it is to have as much money as you can at the end of the game. So the strategy the players used is during the last 5 nights of the game, they did not kick the burglar out. They just let them let the burglar keep taking their money and then kicked him out on the last night, so the other team was had to lose. And you get to see some really fun other discussions play out between the town that didn't have the burglar, figuring out that they didn't have the burglar, and figuring out, hey, you should send me over there because then I'm not on the losing team. It was a really good bit of strategy where you could see everyone acting individually despite the fact that they were in 2 team-esque setups. Any questions about Catch the Burglar? This one was a really good episode overall. Something I didn't touch on earlier, but is true for all of season 1 is you either have a really good main match or you have a really good death match. And with 2 exceptions, the other one is skippable. The main matches in season 1 across the board were pretty good, but the games that were better tended to have a death match that was boring, unfortunately. I don't know if you agree with that, but
I enjoyed the death matches, but it was mostly because they were mostly filled with hate. I mean, it was really, I lost this game. I'm gonna try and bring the person I hate the most in this game right now and kick him out.
very rarely did they
Succeed.
did they think, oh, hey, this is the person I know I can beat.
Yeah, for some reason they all chose the person they thought was the greatest challenge instead of the person they could win against.
I mean, get them out early so you're not wasting your time.
Yeah, but also if you think they're the greatest challenge, you're probably not good against that person.
Yeah, maybe.
You can always try to kick them out on the weak game.
So in the first season, the comment was that you can always try to kick them out on their weak game. Unfortunately, the first, second, and third season all had blind
Unique games.
matchups. You didn't know what the game you were playing was. Actually, they didn't have unique games. Most of the death matches were played 3 times each in the first season. So when you have the death match in the first episode, I'm watching it, and I'll get to my thoughts later. And I'm like, okay, cool. Wonder what they're going to do second episode. Oh, wait, it's the same game. I really hope the whole season isn't the same game over and over again. And thankfully, they changed it in the third and fourth episode to a new game.
That's fair.
But in the third season, again, with them adding players who were average Joes and not people that were already familiar with being on camera, they also added in a cage where they would lock up what the deathmatch was in an envelope, because there was viewer dispute that the deathmatches were chosen after they knew who was playing in the deathmatch to give people an advantage. And there is enough reason to believe that's the case with one of the death matches from season 1.
Oh, very much so.
Season 2, I'm not as inclined. Season 3, they were set like that. And then season 4 had a really cool gimmick where they had 12 distinct death matches. All of them were different. The players
They
who
were all
in the
previous
deathmatch-
death matches.
They were all previous. They were all previous challenges from the first 3 seasons, but their 4th season was an all-star season, so everybody was already familiar with how the game played. They weren't going in fresh, and they all had the ability to look back on their previous seasons and learn from their mistakes. So what they did was they had a gachapon bowl. All of the death matches were on little slips of paper inside of Easter eggs inside this ball that one of the dealers would reach into, pull one out, and that's the game you're playing. But if you're in the death match, you got to take 3 of the potential games and say, I don't want to play that, which either let you save a game you know you're good at for later on in the season, or it let you take a game that the other player you thought they were good at so they couldn't play it and have an advantage over you. So that was a really good concept, and not something I would say is too repeatable at home. I would say the concept of doing those death matches would be a 6. It's repeatable, but you have to have the friend group that really knows what they're doing, and you also do have to be running a mock season of this to be able to do that. Whereas if you're just playing the games by themselves with friends, it doesn't add anything into it. So that's why it's a 6, not like a 10. Catch the Burglar, easy 9. I'd say a 9 because you do need 1 moderator and 8 players. So you need 9 people to run off of their numbers. But if you want to put the legwork in to tweak the numbers that are on it, you absolutely can do so and find what works best for you and your friends. The other game that was mentioned, 2 Rooms and a Boom, you can probably find rules for that on Reddit super easy. All right, so we're still in strategy, but we've moved on to the death matches. This is the first, second, and I want to say 7th death match.
Something like that, yeah. 7th or 8th.
And the way that you play Winning Streak is you play rock, paper, scissors with every other player. Easy. Wait, hold on, not so easy. You have to beat a bunch of them in a row. So what?
Go play rock, paper, scissors.
Don't know. So the way it worked in the show was playing in the first episode. You've got 13 players in a row. Or sorry, you've got 13 players. 2 of them are in the deathmatch, so you have 11 in a row. And the players walked up to each other, the deathmatch players, and they said, "Hey, I'm going to throw paper. I really would appreciate if you threw rock." And they said that to every single player. And they both did this strategy. And so what it came down to is 10 players for the first player threw rock. 10 players for the second player threw rock. And they both had a streak of 10. So it came down to one of the players at the very end being like, well, they both have a 10 streak. You get to pick who you're sending home, and you get to pick who you're saving. And I won't spoil what he picked, but I didn't really appreciate the way that the players decided to run that. I think that it might have just been better to play it as a bit of a
luck.
Not luck. I don't think luck is the right way to play it. I don't think you go in and you say, all right, I'm just going to play actual rock, paper, scissors. Trying to stack the deck, absolutely. But I think that the players who were participating but not on the line should have picked somebody they wanted to support and lied to the other person, or to make more of a game out of it.
Oh, I was gonna say you could also do it so that the person who, the person who they were playing against doesn't actually know any of the rest of the game that's been going on, so they don't know the rest of the streaks or anything.
So what he said was the player who is currently playing in the rock, paper, scissors match could be behind closed doors and not know the streak that's happening. And that's fair. I think by the time
an additional social game, though.
I think by the time you're putting them behind closed doors, they already have had enough time to interact with each other, with everybody. And you absolutely need to give them a half hour to interact with the 2 deathmatch contestants for this to go over well. But by the time that you're removing them, they already kind of know who's benefiting which player. What I was disappointed in, and I will spoil that the player who loses the first deathmatch already knew that the other player was had a perfect streak, and he said, "I'm going to throw scissors, please throw paper," and the person, of course, threw rock. I really think he should have thrown paper, because then if the other person is going to give him the tie streak, and they will both have thrown paper, and he'll be fine. They'll replay. In the event of a tie, you replay. But if he's gonna stab you in the back, you've now saved yourself and earned that last point. Oh well, that's why that player's out first. They weren't a genius. Which actually brings up another fun sidebar, is that the players were picked for different types of being a genius. You had people who were very good with numbers, and you had people who were very good at flattering people around them. So they weren't all social gamers, they weren't all mental gamers, but they all did have something to bring to the table. Every single player in Season 3 and Season 4 had a ton to bring to the table. There were people we didn't get to see on screen enough in Seasons 1 and 2 to say that they could have brought more to the table than they did. But I would like to hope that their casting was done pretty well. So yeah, Winning Streak doesn't have a lot to it. You can play it with your friends. It's a 10 as far as being able to put it on. I don't know why you'd want to. It's not a great game design. All right, our second category is rigged games. Now, these are not rigged by the people putting the games on. These are games that the contestants themselves are able to rig. These are games that the contestants are able to take what they've been given and put their cards in order. In case we don't get to it, Season 2 had a really cool game where they had dice that had magnets inside them. And so the players spent a half hour trying to figure out how to get the dice to stick to each other and roll, but the magnets just weren't strong enough. And what the players figured out is the dice pulled apart. They were actually half dice. And so if you pulled both of your dice apart and swapped halves, you could make 2 dice that only actually had 3 numbers between the 2 of them. And from there, the game played out. But if we get to it, I'll explain the full game. But in Season 1, the rigged game was called the Open Pass game. Ooh. And the way Open Pass works is opening a card is turning it face up. Passing a card is discarding it. The dealer pile shuffles your deck of cards and splays them out in front of you. So you can see all 20 cards and what order they're going to be passed to you. And then you get to decide, is this a card that I want to turn face up? Or is this a card that I want to discard? But you get to decide it. You get to decide all 10 of your 20 cards right from the start. And if you don't like it, you're allowed to reshuffle. And because of that, the player who ended up winning won with something like 60,000 points, and the player who ended up losing had 112, I think. And so
we're great at math.
So the way that it works is you've got this deck of cards, and they all have the same back. And they have the numbers 0 through 10, and then 3 pluses, 3 multiplications, 2 divides, 2 minuses, I think. Yep. And you create 10 cards in a row that are going to be an equation. careful, if you don't start with a number, it's going to be a 0 at the start of your equation. And you work from the back end of the equation to the start. So you work from right to left. So you want the last card that you put to be a number, ideally.
And the first one.
No, the one all the way on the left.
Yeah.
So the first one, you want the first card of the equation to be a number. If the first symbol of your equation is a plus, then you're fine. But if it's a multiplication sign or a division sign, you are in some serious trouble. Order of operations does not matter. It was in order. It is in order. It's not order of operations.
From left to right.
Which does matter in some later games in Season 3, but the first season does not use order of operations. So if you have 4 plus 3 times 6, it's going to be 7 times 6, not 3 times 6 plus 4 for the open pass game. You could spend those garnets, that in-game currency that you were earning, to open a 1 garnet, a 3 garnet, or a 5 garnet pack. It might have been 1, 2, 3, but I think it was 1, 3, 5. The 1 garnet pack didn't have great cards in it, and the backing was black. The 3 garnet pack had great cards in it, but had medium cards in it, and the backing was red. And the 5 garnet pack was had amazing cards in it, and the backing was a really dark navy. There were a number of players who had to have explained to them the difference between the black and the navy. It was close enough that on the screen
you couldn't tell.
I could not tell watching. But there was one other detail that is why I make this game a 3. I put the open pass game at a 3 on replayability. And that's because the cards had the logo from the show on their back, and it was cut, the picture on the back was cut so that there was this little thin line on the logo right here that was white while the rest of the logo was black. And it was really subtle. The image that they used were the logo repeated en masse across the card, but very, very tiny, so maybe half a centimeter in width. So if you were paying really close attention, the cards had an up and a down, and because the example showed them pile shuffling, if you turned your cards around and you stacked your deck,
you knew what cards.
You could instead of just looking at the 2 backings, the black and the blue, you could have 4 backings. You could have blue up, blue down, black up, and black down. And that's how the player who won was able to do so, playing almost a perfect game.
Very well. He was the only one who really thought to do that, too.
Yes. The reason this is so difficult is because you would have to custom order a deck of playing cards that are subtle enough that not all your players would pick up on it, but noticeable enough that somebody might.
Or you could play without that default.
You could play without that mechanism, but the game just isn't as fun. Also, I've kind of spoiled for you how the game is won, so y'all would have to be hosting. You couldn't play.
Was that intended by the
undisclosed?
The question was that intended? And I am of the opinion that it was undoubtedly intended. It was too perfect for them not to intend it.
I agree. And the same deck of cards is used later too.
The same deck of cards,
or at least style of cards.
The same deck of cards is used in later games and in the later shows. And in season 4, they actually do correctly shuffle the deck of cards, and they tell the players we are bridge shuffling. We are turning them around and bridge shuffling so that you cannot do what we did in the open pass game, which is the only reason I think that they didn't mean to do that. But as a game designer, I absolutely would want that to be intentional. And things like the dice game in later seasons, every season has a game where you're able to rig it. The 3rd season has one where you're pulling pucks out of a blind bag, and none of the players were able to figure it out. They figured out that the pucks were not the same size, but the players didn't figure out that some of the pucks were magnetically charged towards each other. So you had a big puck that had magnets in it, you had a big puck that didn't, a small puck that had magnets in it, a small puck that didn't, and a small puck that was dense and heavier than all the others. And so you could absolutely reach in and be like, all right, I want the color red. I know the red puck doesn't have a magnet and is big, so you can take your time, match two of the pucks up against each other to figure out if it's big, and then match it against a bunch of them to figure out if it's magnetically pulling.
And you had the time to do it. It wasn't like reach and grab. They allowed you to try.
Yeah, take as long as you want. But nobody figured out exactly how to differentiate all of them. Some of them figured out that some were denser. Some of them figured out that some were bigger, but they never figured out the magnets. And then the season 4 game is there's a paper mache volcano that you're reaching, not volcano, mountain that you're reaching into to mine minerals, and they accidentally rigged that game. The minerals themselves were made out of different metals. And while the bombs that you were trying to avoid had an edging to them so you could feel the difference between them, the other ones, the point value ones, were not supposed to be different whatsoever. But the bombs were smaller and had an edging, which was intentional. There were multiplier cubes that were smaller that you would mix up with the bombs. And then the minerals that you knew you were pulling out were not supposed to be differentiatable, but they weighed different amounts. And one of the players was just like, yeah, I have sensitive hands. I could tell. And he could. He demonstrated, he showed that he was able to tell the difference, which was just fascinating. Don't know if it was scripted or not.
He very accurately pulled them out by weight.
Yeah, it might have been scripted. Reality television, we'll never know.
Korean reality television.
We'll doubly never know. If you're into K-pop and stuff like that, they've got Super Junior, they've got BTS, they've got...
Quite a few famous.
I think one of them was called like Infinity or something. Infinite? The player from Infinite was one of my favorite players.
So good.
BTS was still my favorite.
The BTS kid was out way too early though. He was very cute. They gave him like he's just kind of here to be flirting with this girl kind of storyline.
And he did.
But
I don't think there was anyone from BTS.
no, it might not have been BTS. Have you seen the show?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Do you remember season 1 who the idol was? Not the one from Infinite who made it really far, but the other one that was out early.
There was, I think he was an actor.
Oh, was he an actor? Okay.
Kind of stuff.
Cheng Yup?
Yeah.
Cheng Chup?
He's like an MC actor.
Oh, cool.
guy.
Cool. And the Infinite guy was Sungyu? Okay, cool.
Okay.
I will say I've watched through this show all 4 seasons. I've only watched through once, and I'm not good with human names. I'm not good with English names. Wow, I did not mean to say that. Sorry.
Human names.
I'm not good with English names, let alone names that are completely different in culture. I'm sorry. I did absolutely love that in their 4th season they did a little segment where they're talking about how all of the players who were still in the game, but one of them knew English so well. And honestly, as a second language, they still probably know English better than I do.
Yeah.
They talked about like what Ivy League school all the players had gone to, and it was just so cool. 5-5 game. How many of you are going to KatsuCon?
Maybe.
So this is a little bit of a self-promotion, but at KatsuCon, we're running a game called I Survived a KatsuCon Game Show. It's not at all based on I Survived a Japanese Game Show, but the name joke was too good to pass up. Did any of you apply for that?
You still can?
No, it closed on New Year's Eve.
Oh, did we?
Yeah, it's closed. That's why I don't mind saying this. So one of the rounds of this game show that we're hosting at KatsuCon is going to be the 5-5 game played as the 4-4 game. And they're going to play with the other contestants making up the jury of 4 and 4. But the way that it's played is you have a little bit of time to learn as much as you can about these guests that they brought in. To be able to say yes and no questions. The only thing is you can't get too personal. In your questions, they did say if you ask something too personal, then you're not gonna, they'll disqualify your question and give you 0 points. They had 6 men and 4 women, I think, so that you couldn't just say, divide by gender, dividing by age, I don't think was a thing that worked very well. But the players were very smart. They got a lot of information and they took their time. And so one of the questions the player asked was, I have a birthday in February or October. And 5 of them had a birthday in February or October, and 5 of them didn't, and that's how they scored a point. But one of them said something about, I am from such and such region. And 6 of them said no, even though 5 of them were from that region. But because they were on a town that was on the border, they didn't really consider themselves from that reason, so they misunderstood the question a little bit, and they didn't get a point that way. So you had to be very careful in how you were wording your questions. And something their version had that our version is not going to have is they had a character limit. You could only use 12 characters. I think imposing a character count.
We don't have the same kind of characters they do.
Right, but we could do 60 letters or less, but that would just take up too much time for the panel that we're running. All in all, I would say this game is another 3 or 4 in the replayability factor.
The best one up there, essentially, essentially what they did is hand 5 pieces of paper out and said, I handed you a piece of paper, and that's how they got a point. Or I tapped you on the shoulder.
I think that was beautifully done. But the other players they thought their way through the scenario and did what they could. Singmin, I think it was Singmin, said, ma'am, can you cross your legs? And then he said, okay, 5 of you are crossing your legs. Because when he got up there to write his question, 4 of them were and 1 of them wasn't. So 2 of the 3 players really played off of the turning things to your advantage, and one of the players forced his own fate. He went and did particular things to exactly 5 players in order to ask 3 questions that were guaranteed to work.
It was a smart move.
This is something you could do as a fun party game if you've got a nice large group of people. You just go around the room and everybody takes an active player turn, and then the other 6, 8, 10, 12 players stand up or sit down for yes, no, or true, false.
You could. I don't know why you'd want to. I don't think it'd be a fun party game though.
I think it'd be a fun way to I think it'd be a fun MAGFest party game.
Yeah.
Not one of the room ragers, but if you're sitting down, it's 1 a.m. and you just kind of want to take it easy and enjoy the drink that's in your hand, and get to know a bunch of people. I think it plays better when you do know a bunch of people and you can kind of play off of the, oh, I thought I knew this about you factor. The times where you don't get half the group will be more fun than the times you do get half the group with that kind of setup.
Yeah.
I am particularly looking forward to how this plays out. We are giving the contestants an hour before the panel to get to know each other and strategize, and we're not telling them ahead of time that maybe you should pay attention. Oh yeah, do we have any questions about that?
Got 5 and 5, and it wasn't the 5 you expected.
So he said it would be interesting if you got 5 and 5 and it wasn't the 5 you expected, and I definitely said that would be interesting, but it means that you're not playing the game very well. Any other questions? All right, we are on to poker variants. So these are all going to be games that kind of play like poker does in some facet or another. And then another question for Mr. Tech. Is this we cut off 10 minutes before the hour kind of thing, or is this we have the full hour? Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I don't run over on you guys. All right, so Indian poker is a game that I do actually endorse as a fun game. I've definitely played this back when I was at summer camps with Boy Scouts and stuff like that. it's a nice variant that you have control over how you play the game. I don't agree with the name per se. It's kind of racy, but it's not that is the game they use. That's the name they use in the game, and so I was going to print it as is. And the way you play is you take the card and you put it on your forehead like a little headdress. So hence the name. You play with a deck of cards that you can count. It gets reshuffled after you've gone through every single card. And across the entirety of the Genius, players either do well or don't do well with counting cards. But
Season 1 was pretty good for it.
Season 1, the first player to do this was very good at it. Season 3, it might be Season 4, but Season 3 there was a player who he did so by having a stack of poker chips that represented the number of 10s, the number of 9s, and the number of 8s. And so he wouldn't bet from those stacks except when those cards came up so that he knew how many had already been used. And that's how he managed to stack the deck in his favor of sorts. We did have a question a second ago. Did we answer your question?
I was just going to say that this was also played in the anime Kakegurui.
I also have seen that anime and the live action. That's horrible. Which is why you watch it. Both the anime and the live action are horrible.
I only watched season 1 of the anime. This is the only game I actually enjoyed from it.
Yeah, no, it's a great game in the anime. If you haven't watched that, only watch this episode. Essentially, the variant in that episode of the anime, they're all in-debt players, and the game is whoever wins gets their debt cleared away. However, the rule variant that they used was however much debt you owe. So if I owed $10,000, each one of my chips was worth $1,000. They're worth 10% of your debt. But they're worth 10% of the debt that's in front of you. So two players switched their debts and messed up everyone else's counting on how much money they had.
I definitely have. I can't remember what show. There's another reality show that has played this game before. It's a fun concept. It really does let you psychologically play with your opponent. It lets you play a game where you have a decent amount of control over your fate. It has a high luck to it because, yeah, the cards 6 through 10 could be dealt to my opponent every single time. I could conceivably never get a winning hand and still win.
To be fair, you also could have very good pairs. You can find a teammate that'll help you and kind of show you what you have if you're good at it.
I am absolutely disappointed when this game came back in Season 4 with what happens in that deathmatch because if I'm not mistaken, it ended after 2 hands. Not what I want to see. I want to see them actually play the game, but I also might be mixing up with a different one. Yeah, this one's a solid 10. Not only can you play it with your friends, but I encourage it. It really is a decent game to play. If you don't remember any of these games or their rules, you can just go on Wikipedia and search The Genius Season 1, and it has all of the games listed and has all of their rules. Some of them you need to tweak for an at-home group as opposed to a on-set in front of a camera group, especially because the games are designed to have one winner and one loser as opposed to just being designed for a winner or for fun. Dilemma games. So these are going to be Prisoner's Dilemma-based games. These are going to be heavily social games, but I thought were close enough to game theory that they deserved their own category.
Food?
Yeah, food. They're all food themed, if I'm not mistaken.
My favorite.
You want to go for it?
So, essentially, so this is my favorite in pretty much all of what I've watched of The Genius. This is not the one. I like the hunting.
Oh, the stag game. The
Stag game. There we go.
Yeah. No, so this one is sorry, not the stag hunt. This is the stag hunt. In dilemma theory, in game theory, there's a game called the stag hunt. You have 2 hunters And every day they go out hunting. And no matter what, they can always catch a rabbit. And the rabbit will feed them for a day. But they won't be able to sell the rabbit, and they won't be able to make money. So they won't be able to sell any excess food, so they won't be able to make money. So hunting rabbits every day is not completely sustainable. However, there's also a stag that they can go hunt. And if they hunt the stag, that will support them for that will feed them for 5 days, and so they can use anything extra that they hunt in those 4 days where they're eating the stag to make money and be able to live. However, if both hunters go hunting the stag will run away. And if the stag runs away, they walk home empty-handed. So the way that you have to play it out is you and this other hunter, independent of each other, are going to make this choice every single day. What do you choose? And it's one of the base level games that you have in economic game theory. The base, the base most level of game theory being prisoner's dilemma, which we'll get to in the next game.
Can I talk about my game now?
Okay.
The Hunger game, where you have 3 tiers of different predators and prey. Essentially, the lion's at the top, and the mouse is at the bottom. And every single animal has. Oh no!
This, by the way, is a werewolf variant. It is not a dilemma game. The one you're describing.
I saw the abundance and famine and thought food. I think it was like the food chain game or something like that. Anyways,
Season 3, Episode 1.
And essentially, there's 4 biomes: air biome, water, forest, desert. Every night you choose what room you're going to be in. You can only stay away from your biome for 1 night at a time, so you always have to return back to your biome, and everyone has a different objective. So the mouse maybe, he coexists with the lion, so his goal is to feed the lion. If you're at the top of the pyramid, you have to eat every night, and if you're at the bottom of the pyramid, you could probably go about 3 nights without eating. If all of the small creatures are in the same room at the same time, no one's allowed to be eaten. There's, I guess, like power in numbers, but essentially how the game worked out is that the lion ate very well and was doing very well, and then got into a biome in which it couldn't eat the last small prey because the small prey can't be eaten if it's the last one. And so it starved itself accidentally.
So the food chain game is one that we're not going to get to tonight, although I guess we kind of just did. I encourage you to look up the rules for the food chain game. I would put it at a 7. It's a little difficult to run, but it is something you could run at home by yourselves.
And fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm going to try to finish out Season 1 real quick. We've got 8 minutes left, so I am going to try to finish out Season 1. But that, out of all of the games we could have detoured to, that's probably the one I would suggest looking up the rules, playing at home. Out of everything, that's the best one to do so. Abundance and famine. You've got famine land, abundance land. If too many people go to abundance land, nobody gets any food. If too many people go to famine land, nobody gets any food. You really have to work out with other players how you're going to split up who goes where. And it's very hard to do that and eat while also having the most bread at the end of the game. So it's a nice balance. Can you run it at home? Absolutely. Should you run it at home?
Preferably just go to Walmart, buy as much bread as you can, and eat a lot of bread.
Garlic bread. No? Okay, I thought we were going to play that up. All right, then we have the scamming horse race. They played this twice on the season. Once, the first time it was all the players in at the same time. They had information that they could or could not tell to the other players based on how the horses were going to finish the race. So one person had horse number 4 is in first place at the end of round 5. Which you can kind of infer, hey, if they're in first place at the end of round 5, they're probably not going to be in first place at the end of the game. Maybe. I don't know. There were 3 different ways you could pair up different clues to figure out who the first and or second place were going to be. So every player did have the ability to predict this. Where the dilemma comes in is you have to trick the other players to bet on other horses, because if everybody bets on the winning horse, it's only going to pay out a little bit, and the person who bets on the second horse is going to win outright. This is very, very difficult to run at home. You could run their exact setup, and even then you still have to do the math to mess with the odds, and you have to be able to display those odds over and over again as each couple of rounds ends. So I'd put this as like a 1 or a 2.
And have horses.
You don't need to have horses.
You have to have live horses.
Horse race number 2 was the blind scamming horse race. Each of the 4 players left in the game was able to bring a guest. Only the guest was able to make bets, and only the guest was able to talk to the other guests and the other players. The players were confined to a room for the duration of the game.
It was a hard game.
Do we have any questions about horse race? All right. Kong's Dilemma, or I'd say like stage 2 Prisoner's Dilemma, because you're playing with teams. You and your team are against the other team, and you have to wager Kongs or beans. And you wager these beans by privately putting them in a pot with your team's number on them. And whichever team has more beans in their pot wins the round. And they only tell you how many beans were used by the team that won the round, not lost the round. Or, does it say on screen if I'm wrong?
It doesn't.
It doesn't? Okay, yeah. They displayed how many beans were used to win, I think. But it might have been that they used the amount, they displayed one of the 2 teams, so that one team gained information, but the other thing is you are playing against your teammates, because even if you're on the winning team, if somebody else has saved more beans, if they haven't donated as much, they're going to win, and you're just going to be able to be up for elimination. Likewise, if you're on the losing team and you have the fewest number of beans, you are up for elimination, so it's a double Prisoner's Dilemma in that sense. 6-player game. This one was a lot of fun to watch, probably because the personalities playing in the game at that stage were still all very good. They'd gotten through there's too many players, we can't really focus on any of them, and it started to click. But that also might have been because of the language barrier, because I'm watching subtitles, so this is a personal opinion. The image game, I'm going to glance over entirely because it plays almost the same as Dixit, which you can go play in the tabletop room. You play an image and say a word, and then everybody else plays an image, and then everybody except for you tries to figure out which was your image. And if everybody gets it, or if nobody gets it, you lose 2 of your points. And if the other player in the deathmatch gets it, you lose a point. So you need to give enough of a clue that somebody gets it, but not the person that you're playing against, and not everybody. If you make it too easy, then you're also you want to be right down the middle. Finally, we are on games of skill. These are basically, how smart are you? The expression auction, I do not remember what this game is called, but there is a game that comes with a deck of cards and a sleeve of chips, and each player has a certain number of chips. Nope, I am totally wrong. Expression auction was another one of those, you're making an expression, and this one did play with orders of operation, so multiplication division did come first in this game. You have blocks that you can use to purchase expressions, and then make an equation, and you want to come as close to 10 as you can. The loser was somebody who didn't make an equation, and the winner was the player who had 10. If nobody has 10, then it's the person closest to 10. Yatinori is a game that is similar to Trouble in the sense that the way the board is structured. You have to race around the board, and if your opponent's piece lands on you, it goes back to the start. This is this is a strategy game, but it also has a dilemma factor to it because your opponents are picking one of the pieces. They are picking yes or no for your pieces, just like you are picking yes or no for your pieces. So if they both don't want you to get a 4, only one of them has to say no, and either of them can say yes. But getting a 0 is actually super beneficial. So there's a lot of play in that game that we really can't get into in this time.
Same picture.
Same picture hunt, super difficult. I'll show you the board. You have the letters in the front and the symbols in the back, and you've got a conveyor belt. And you have to match your symbols, or else you will fall off the conveyor belt. So it was either the first person to fall loses, or if you make it to the front of your conveyor belt, you win. Not like American game shows. It was a like miniature conveyor belt that you had a token on. You were not actually on a conveyor belt. And finally, Gilhap is the game of set. Have any of you played this one before? This is a pretty famous game. You try to make 3 that either have all alike or all different, all 3 of their different attributes. So 2, 5, 9, they're all red, they all have a gray background, but none of them are the same shape. And that concludes season 1. So thank you all for coming out. If you liked this, I absolutely would love to come back and do season 2 next year. Come check us out at KatsuCon, or you can find videos of our other panels on facebook.com/conlg. Have a wonderful evening, and yeah, let's play some video games and some board games, guys.